Today, I want to go over the drafts from BLG versus Weibo in the LPL Grand Finals a couple days ago, really to see and answer the question of whether or not BLG is going to be a legitimate threat in Worlds to teams like Genji, T1, HLE, really top tier Korean teams, and see if BLG is really considered a favorite going into Worlds. And through their first pick of Renekton, my answer to that question would be probably not. They obviously don't want to win the game, but even though they did smash this Series 3-0, their drafts would be considered good if they won the Series 3-0. But I'm just going into the lens of are these drafts going to hold up against top tier competition come Worlds time? So they go in first pick Renekton, which obviously is bad. Weibo answer was Ziggs and Zeri, so already they have a winning draft. They're outscaling come 25 minutes or so. Once they hit their 2-3 on power spikes, Renekton is going to be pretty useless and not going to be able to get on top of that backline. BLG then go ahead and just completely split themes. This is the problem I have with Renekton. You pick an early game champion like Renekton and then just completely go away from that given theme. Lilia and Smolder want to hyperscale like crazy. By the time they become relevant in the game, Renekton is going to be irrelevant. So your comp is completely split themes, and your comp just doesn't have a consistent identity, and these champions want to play the game differently. This is what I mean by themes. With a Cassante round out in first phase, it's just boring top lane. I'm kind of just considering a non-roll at this point because this is the only matchup, and it ends up just being the fact that both of these champions just become irrelevant at a certain point in the game. Cassante is not going to be able to do anything against Lilia and Smolder. Renekton's not going to be able to do anything against Ziggs and Zeri. They kind of cancel each other out. It's boring. It's unfortunate that nobody in the entire world picks any counter pick to either of these champions. It's absurd, it's sad, and it's ridiculous, and people should be embarrassed that they're unable to do that. Weibo go ahead and R4 Rel, which is, fine. It can combo well with the Ziggs in team fights, and having AoE team fight power is perfectly fine. It'll be able to buy space for the hyper carries. It's not great, it's not bad, it's just kind of there. And then BLG go ahead and round out with Kaisa, and I believe this last pick, it's going to be the Alistar. So I just don't really understand the Alistar pick. People think it's this huge counter to Rel because he can cancel the little jump combo thing. It's not actually really how that works consistently. Maybe it'll happen a couple times in lane phase, but in terms of team fight value, Rel is always going to be greater in that aspect. Alistar just kind of combos once and then stands there and waits for 8 seconds until he can do it again. So as a whole comp, BLG's comp isn't awful, but, Renekton and Alistar do definitely cause some problems here, but the core three of Lilia, Smolder, and Kaisa definitely have some scaling potential. Well, they definitely have scaling potential, and come that 20, 25, 30 minute mark, they're going to be in a really good spot. Let's go ahead and jump over to the Game 2 draft. So taking a look at the Game 2 draft, Weibo did the same thing that BLG did in the first game, except infinitely worse. You first pick Corki with a theme of scaling, range, teamfight past 25 minutes with that 2-item power spike, and then you go completely in the opposite direction with full smork early game, snowballing, or Nidalee or Renekton. So the problem with this is that Corki's a good champion, and Nidalee and Renekton are trash tier champions. So you already have incongruency, and these champions just can't function together. As soon as Corki becomes relevant, the other two are going to become irrelevant, and Nidalee, all she can offer is a simple heal. And it's pretty unfortunate that people do this, but, I'm just me. BLG's first phase is really, really good. Ashe, Zyra, and Zeri all have consistent themes, all have, great scaling, good range, good utility as well. Ashe slows combined with Zyra slows with Rylai's and her plants. Going to be even better for Zeri to be able to kite there. But just in general, it's already won through first phase for BLG. Weibo don't really have a way to play this game because the second it hits 20, 25 minutes, BLG's carries hit 2 items, and Nidalee and Renekton are just going to be useless. BLG's just going to win the game. BLG R4 Gnar, which is, kind of random, and it doesn't really serve a purpose, but again, I'm not really counting top lane as a role, because no one actually picks any top lane champions these days, so Gnar is definitely going to outvalue Renekton, but I just think Gnar's a pretty bad champion because his main value is his ultimate, and it's so easy to play around. But BLG do R5 Braum, which is so good. I love this champion. I think he's super underutilized. Braum utterly destroys Corki, Ezreal, and Nidalee, so with that Unbreakable Shield, he's going to get super, super good value, and he's also just a really good lane companion for Ashe. The utility and the slows is just really, really good with that combo. So in Game 2, huge draft win for BLG. It's not even close. Let's jump over to Game 3. So here in the Game 3 draft, Weibo do a little bit better job. Once they first pick Corki, they go in second rotate Brand and Cassante. So they're not super hard splitting themes this time. They're pretty on track. Corki and Brand both have ridiculous damage potential in late game teamfights and want to consistently scale. BLG, however, did the same mistake as the previous two games, with Maokai and Smolder both wanting to scale in teamfight and Renekton wanting to play early game. I'm going to keep repeating it as long as it exists. Renekton and Cassante, why is this the only matchup in existence in top lane at this point? Neither of these champions are top tier in their role. Cassante has his moments, but Renekton's just complete garbage. The best top laners in the game, like Ornn, GP, ridiculously good scaling champions that don't even have weak lane phases. You can pick any tank into Renekton and it'll beat the Renekton in lane and outscale the Renekton. So I don't really understand it. It astounds me that pro teams are so unwilling and stubborn to try new things or try counter picks into these champions. Like Cassante is countered by Fiora, is countered by Garen, countered by Gwen, countered by anything ranged, really. Both of these champions are countered by anything ranged, but no one has any willingness to try anything new. And it's quite astounding that these players and coaches are paid so much money to perform like this. It's unfortunate. BLG go ahead and lock in Jhin on R4, which I don't love, but I understand because there are so many bot lane bans in this game. It's probably next in line. I prefer Varus, or I would even take Kog'Maw, I would take Twitch over Jhin. I might even not even pick an ADC in the bot lane because I have Smolder. You can flex Smolder to the bot lane if you really want to. But who am I to say anything? It's not a horrid pick, but it's definitely not great. Jin's always just kind of one of those champions that's just kind of there. He has decent scaling for sure, can do a lot of damage in the late game, but just as a champion, I don't think he's super great. Weibo then go ahead and round out with Varus and Alistar, so I would actually give them the draft edge in this game, even though Alistar and Cassante aren't great, especially the Alistar. The core three of Corki, Brand, and Varus are all really long range and have insane damage potential once they get their item spikes and start team fighting. The only thorn in their side is going to be the Smolder, really, and can they contain his stacking and his snowballing? Along with the Maokai frontline CC potential, those two champions are just really, really insane. And I don't think that, believe it or not, I don't think the Renekton and the Gym are game-losing enough picks to overcome Smolder and Maokai's OPness. And then the Bard on R5 is, fine. It's pretty good. I think it's also a pretty underrated champ and can combo pretty well with Jhin in lane as well. So I think that overall BLG's comp isn't awful in Game 3, but it's definitely outdrafted. Big draft win for Weibo in Game 3. So based off of this, these three drafts in these three games, even though BLG smashed the series 3-0, I know they did, but I'm just asking the question, are these drafts going to hold up against top tier international competition? Off of these three games, my answer to that question would be no. And in combination with the LPLs as a region, their inconsistency and their coin flippiness in the early game, I can see this being the LPL's weakest year at Worlds yet. Thanks for watching. See you next time.